Hello and welcome to Extension Network. I'm Terry Carter with the University of Georgia's Cobb County Cooperative Extension. We have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about aquaponics, hydroponics, all those different things, and we'll let Mr. Daniel Price, who's with our A&R department, tell you all about that and the difference between the two. So please stay tuned. I'm going to be doing a pesto pasta, and I've gotten that basil from that tower that Daniel has. So we have a really great show. I'm going to cook, and Daniel's going to show you how to grow it. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the basil pesto, I love basil pesto, and it's very easy to do. And I believe it's very difficult sometimes to find the pesto, especially enough pesto to make this. So if you don't have enough pesto, what you can do is you can substitute with mint. I wouldn't use a lot of mint. You can also use spinach. You can use kale. So any of those green leafy vegetables that we normally eat, you can put some of that in there. You can really make it all. You could make a kale pesto if you wanted to. That's much easier and much cheaper to do. But if you have enough basil, go ahead and try and use that basil. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the basil pesto, we basically need 2 cups of fresh basil. Somebody asked me once, can you use dried basil? You could, but it wouldn't taste anything like this. It's going to be a lot darker, and it's not going to be as flavorful. So please try not to use dried basil unless you just absolutely have to do that. But this is 2 cups, and this is 2 cups of what I would consider kind of packed down. So I pushed it down as much as I could like that. So I kind of packed it in there. We're still barely at 2 cups, but this is enough. So the first thing we want to do is to combine all of the ingredients in the food processor. So I'm going to go ahead and add my basil. And again, I'm using all basil today, and it's a little wet, have a little bit of water in there, but that's okay. I'm using all basil today because I was able to harvest enough of that to use, okay? Next thing, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. So fresh garlic once again. So that's my 2 teaspoons. A 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And here's my grated Parmesan cheese. Now with the Parmesan cheese, you really want to use a good quality Parmesan cheese. You really don't want to be using that cheap stuff in that can or that bottle that we used to use. That is what my grandmother used all the time. Please don't use that unless you absolutely positively have to. Now I know when you go into the grocery stores, you may not be able to find everything that you normally find, so you may have to substitute a little bit, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and add our good quality Parmesan cheese there. All right, and then we have pine nuts is what the recipe calls for, but I'm not using pine nuts. Pine nuts can be very expensive, so what I'm gonna substitute today, walnuts, and that's just fine to use walnuts or any other kind of nut, but I prefer walnuts if I'm not going to use the pine nuts, okay? So we'll add that. And then last but not least, we want to add our extra virgin olive oil. And you want to make sure you use a good quality olive oil. That looks delicious, nice and thick and green. And you want to add also some salt and pepper, and it really doesn't matter how much salt and pepper you use, so I'm just going to randomly add a little bit in here. And then if you need to add some later, you can add some later on. And my pepper. Oops, didn't mean to add that much. All right, and so that's all to it. And it's that easy to make the pesto. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this thing to work. All right. All right, there she goes. I have to shake it a little bit to get it going. Oh, there it is. And you want to just keep it going till it's mixed up but not overmixed. All right. Let's take a look at it now and see what it's looking like. All right, looking pretty good. Looking at that, I think I want to add just a little bit more olive oil to it because it's a little thick, so I want to thin that out a bit. So I'm going to just add some more olive oil. And there's no exact way to make this. You can kind of make this your own. Do what you like, okay? So You know, add a little bit more, a little bit less of whatever you like. Here, if you like a lot of garlic, by all means, add more garlic. So let's get this going on. Ooh. Turn that down a little bit. All right, so let's take a look at it now. That got a little loud, didn't it? All right, so it looks pretty good to me. That's what you pretty much want to have, kind of that consistency. If you want it a little bit thinner, you can thinner out a little bit more. All right, so we have our pesto made. Now, for this recipe, we're going to use this basil pesto in a chicken pesto pasta. Now, you could do whatever you wanted to do with this. You could put it just over chicken. You could put it just over pasta. It's totally up to you. But we're going to do what we call a chicken pesto pasta. You can make this ahead of time, have it already ready to go, have it in the refrigerator for several days. You could even freeze this. It works very well. I've had some in my freezer for at least, I would say, maybe 2 months. I took it out, tastes just fine. So this holds up very, very well in the fridge and then in the freezer as well. So what we have here, the recipe calls for 1 pound of uncooked penne pasta, but I decided not to use the penne pasta. I actually decided to use a different pasta. So now we've made our pesto, we've gotten it out of the way. That is the hard part. And as I said, you can do it the day before, hours before, or even weeks before. It's totally up to you. So what we want to do is make a chicken pesto pasta with the penne pasta, fettuccine, linguine, angel hair pasta, whatever you like, bow tie pasta. It really doesn't matter. You can use whatever you like, okay? So here we go. We're going to mix it up. Here's our pasta, and I chose to use fettuccine Alfredo, and I'm going to dump that in there. And that's really, this is actually not even a half of a box. So this is probably about 1/3 of a regular size box, all right? And so we have chicken here. This is basically 1 chicken breast. You can decide how much chicken you want, and if you want it vegan, you can leave the chicken out altogether. All right, so I'm going to add the chicken in here. And all I did was kind of pound this chicken down and then add in a little salt and pepper to it and just cooked it in the oven. All right, we have our pesto here. And how much pesto you put in here is totally up to you. I have some snow peas, and I'm just randomly putting in vegetables that I like. You may have some of this stuff left over. This is sun-dried tomatoes. I'm adding that in as well. And then here, I just made some roasted vegetables. This is some roasted not root vegetables, I'm sorry. Onions, this zucchini, which is a different kind of zucchini. I wanted to try the little round one. Tastes delicious. Onions and green bell peppers. And I'm just going to add these in here as well. And that's really all to it. And look how quickly this meal came together. As I said, everything can be made ahead of time. And if you want to, when your guests get home, get to your house, you can just start to mix this up. And once again, add in however much pesto you want. If you like a lot, add in a lot. And if you want just a little, add in a little. And that's all to it. So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to have Mr. Daniel Price to come on, and he's going to talk about all of that aquaponics and hydroponics and all of that stuff, all right? So stay tuned, all right? Thank you. And that's our final dish. Doesn't it look delicious? All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
You wanna go for a ride?
When I saw your face for the first time, I wondered how your life had been. Had anybody held you or loved you? Or had they never noticed you
Come so.
there? What are you doing here? If your eyes could cry, I'd see a tear. The sadness that I see, you're coming home.
Why are you turning in this dog?
Be the best of friends.
Well, we're moving.
There's a problem
How long have you had the dog?
out there.
11
Haunts me
years.
almost every day. Don't turn your head
You
and
understand the
try
dog
to
will likely be put down?
Yeah.
That won't make it go
I'll need you to complete the surrender if you would, please. You're giving up all rights to the dog.
here.
Are you okay with this?
Both my eyes have filled with tears. go home,
Yeah.
leaving others' fate unknown. They're killing our best friend. There's only so much one can do, that's why I'm out here asking you. How
Did you want to
can
keep the
help
collar?
me?
I don't think so.
Don't run away from your fear. And lovers need to learn and finally be concerned. They're killing our best friends. There's only so much one can do, that's why I'm out here asking you. How can you help me?
Every year, in Metro Atlanta alone, nearly 90,000 unwanted animals are put to death. It is epidemic and unnecessary. The problem can be fixed. Spay and neuter your animals. The time to act is now. Stop the needless killing. Please help us. www.mostlymutts.org.
Thank you, Terry, for that lovely introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Daniel Price. I'm a program assistant with the University of Georgia's College of Agriculture and Environmental Science, and I work here in the Cobb County Extension Office. Today we're going to talk a little bit about hydroponic gardening indoors. Now, you might already be familiar with a lot of the services that we provide here in the Extension Office with gardening, agriculture, and farming, and we also have a lot of unbiased research-based publications. But we also can help you with a lot of non-conventional forms of gardening, such as hydroponics. Now, one thing that we do have that's a wonderful additive is this, which is from our Florida Extension Office. It's a publication on actually how to make your own hydroponic system in your own home. And this can be adapted for both indoors and outdoors. Now, this particular hydroponic system that we have right here is actually called an aeroponic system. And it might look very similar to some systems you've seen before, but it also might look very different. And that's because, as you might wonder why I have an umbrella on the table, hydroponics is more of an umbrella term that really describes a bunch of different types of systems out there. Now, this particular system is known as aeroponics, but my personal favorite is actually a system called aquaponics. Aquaponics is where you're actually cultivating plants and fish at the same time, and you're using the fish waste to actually fertilize your plants. I love it, but it does require a lot of maintenance and a lot of constant monitoring because you're trying to keep an animal alive and a plant alive all at the same time. This particular system, known as aeroponics, actually has a 20-gallon drum at the bottom that we've mixed with a water nutrient solution, and it brings that water up with a pump and sprinkles directly on the root system a nutrient water solution. Now, in aeroponics, you actually suspend the plant's root system in the air and spray that mix directly on the root system at random intervals. Now, the reason we do that on this system is because not all plants can handle having their root system continuously submerged in water. This sort of system, where we're only doing it at intervals, allows us to grow a wider variety of plants. Now, with this system, we're using several different forms of growth medium. With this system, we're actually using rock wool as a growth medium. But there's several different growth mediums you can actually use out there on the market. You can use sand, rock, pebbles, or even porous beads that are made from volcanic rock, something that allows the plant to stabilize its root system. But what we are not using is good old-fashioned dirt. Now, hydroponic systems can be adapted very well to outside gardening, and they're used quite often. In fact, a lot of the vegetables that we get from the grocery store are actually made with hydroponic systems. But the fact that we can do it indoors as well and do it so successfully gives us a lot of benefits. Now, like every form of gardening, there is some pros and cons to just about everything that you might do. Now, with the hydroponic system, let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the negative sides. With this system, we actually have grow lights, and that's extremely important in order for us to be able to grow our plants indoors. But since we're not dealing with the amount of sunlight that we might get at different times of the year outside, or the temperature, we're actually able to grow plants year-round. In fact, in this particular system, we can actually grow and harvest anywhere between 15 to 20 heads of leafy greens every 2 to 3 weeks. That's a lot of vegetables, and we can do that year-round. Now, one of the other benefits to an indoor system is we're not having to deal with some of the atypical diseases and insects and pests that you might have to deal with an outdoor garden. So in some regard, that actually can save you a little bit of money, so you're not having to buy your insecticides. Some of the downsides, however, with a hydroponic system is it does have a lot more initial cost. Now, whether you purchase a pre-existing system like this or whether you build a system yourself, there definitely is more of an investment than just putting plants in the dirt outside. And you're buying other things like fertilizer regardless of which system you go with. A system like this also requires constant monitoring. One of the things that we have to monitor on a regular basis is actually the pH. No different than monitoring the soil pH in your vegetable garden, we monitor the pH of the water solution. Vegetables have a specific pH range that they grow best at, which is 6 to 6.5. Well, in a water system like this, that pH can change very quickly and it affects all the plants very quickly. Whereas with an in-ground garden, the pH doesn't change overnight. So if you know what pH you start with within a vegetable growing season, chances are it's going to stay in that range throughout the year. I want to thank you all very much for listening to this presentation, and please know that if you have any questions at all about farming, gardening, both indoors and outdoors, and particularly with hydroponic systems, UGA Extension is here to help with research-based, unbiased information. And you can also come anytime to visit our display and see what we're growing. Please feel free to let us know. I'll be waiting at the phones.
The land-grant university system was created to advance agriculture and mechanical sciences 150 plus years ago. And we realized that some of the research that was coming from out of the land grants, it was not reaching the people. So the Smith-Lever Act was passed 100 years ago. The purpose of that act was to create the Cooperative Extension Service, which was to take the research that was created by the land-grant universities and actually give it to the people who could use it.
And so that was the genesis for the creation of the Extension Service, or the Cooperative Extension Service, as it was called at that time. It was to take the research-based information from the university, from that land-grant school, and get it to the people who need it so that they could use it to improve their lives, their economy, and to improve agriculture.
Well, I lived on a farm until I went off to be in the Navy and to go to college. And my father was a very fine and aggressive farmer. And of course, the source of our advice when Daddy wanted to do something better or learn about a new species of peanut or cotton or corn was to go to the Extension Service. And they gave him whatever advice he needed. And it was just like a constant source of inspiration and advice and counsel, and sometimes correction when he was doing something wrong. And as I grew older and when I came back from the Navy and spent the next 17 years as a full-time farmer, I saw firsthand the great value of what the Extension Service offered to everyone in our county, not just farmers, but everybody in the merchants and others who did business with farmers and depended on agricultural income.
My earliest experience with the Cooperative Extension Service came as a result of joining the 4-H Club when I was probably in a middle school age group. They encouraged us to participate in competitions, and we had to learn our various project areas and make presentations in the local and the district competitions. And also, I began to show livestock as a part of my 4-H project. and continued to do that for a number of years. So the Cooperative Extension Service and its supervision of 4-H was an important part of my younger years.
I serve Fulton County. It's a large county. We don't have that many farmers, but we have a lot of people. And we have a lot of families that just simply need help. So Extension brings that human touch to our community. We answer the questions directly. We give it to you in a manner that you can understand and you can use, and you can apply it immediately. So Extension is kind of like that friend next door. You may not talk to them every day, but you're really glad that they're there.
One of the advantages that we have is that we're always on the cutting edge of the newest information and the newest research that's coming out of the University of Georgia. And we are a direct source that our clients can come to find that information. We're a filter for that information, and we are able to explain it in a way that people can use it for practical everyday application, whether it's on the farm, in their families, or in their communities.
An increasingly important element of Georgia's and in America's total production of food will have to be designed toward meeting the needs of our own country and other nations more than it has been in the past. So I think the gamut of influence of Extension Service I don't think has been minimized in recent modern days, but I think the opportunities to expand the influence has been greatly increased now and I believe in the future.
I think the future for cooperative extension across the nation is very strong, and I know in our state it is.
The simple problems in agriculture have been solved, and they've been solved for the last 100 years or so. Only complex problems remain. Our researchers on our land-grant universities working in multidisciplinary teams will provide solutions for these complex and complicated problems. But how you transfer that information back to the farmer, back to the agribusiness, back to the family or the youth development specialists through 4-H is going to be very different. That's where cooperative extension has always been good. That's what their strength is, and that's where we see them being so important in the future.
We're continuing to see evolution in the production of agricultural products, and I expect that to continue. We will probably have fewer farms, but larger farms. And the Cooperative Extension Service certainly has a role to play in that new structure. They've adapted very well to the changing circumstances and the changing economy of our country over the last 100 years, and I have every reason to believe that they will continue to do that here in Georgia for the next 100 years.
The most rewarding part of my job is being able to help people and provide current research-based information for our clients. They come to us over and over for that information because they see us as the #1 source of information that they can rely upon, whether it's for their farm, their agribusiness, or for their families.
Real life changes. Extension brings real life changes, and being that agent in the community on the ground, being that agent to serve is a pretty miraculous thing.
In all the ways that I had an early developmental life in earning a living and learning how to live as a productive citizen, I would say the Extension Service had a major beneficial effect on me.
We found that distracted driving is now the leading cause of auto accidents in the United States. This spring, Georgia legislators passed the new hands-free driving law. That states that you can no longer have a cell phone in your hands while you're operating a motor vehicle.
Well, how's everything going?
I stopped you today because you're using a cell phone and you're holding it to your ear.
It was an emergency, I had to.
The new law states that you cannot support any wireless device, including a cell phone, with any part of your body. That means you can't hold any wireless device in your hand, have it on your lap, or hold it against your ear with your shoulder.
You can use anything else that does not require you to actually have that phone up to your ear.
The new hands-free Georgia law states that you cannot watch or record a video. You cannot type, send, receive, or read any text-based communications while operating a vehicle.
I saw you texting back there when we were at that stop sign. Is there some reason for that?
This means that unless your phone is being used solely for GPS or a phone call, and that phone call is utilizing a hands-free device or other in-car Bluetooth system, it's best to leave that cell phone out of reach where it will not be a distraction. You may use your phone while you are legally parked. Legally does not mean while you are waiting at a stop sign or a stoplight. Legally parked means in a safe area, such as a parking space or parking lot. Finally, it's important to know that you can use your wireless device for GPS. However, you need to have that GPS set up before you start moving. If you have a route change or need to make edits to your final destination, you need to be legally parked before you start making those changes.
You've just seen 3 violations of the new hands-free Georgia law. Just remember, you can still use your phone to dial 911, and first responders are allowed to use their phones in the performance of their duties. There are several other exceptions, and if you'd like to see those, go to our websites for links to the Georgia law. This law is designed to make the road safer for everyone, so please drive safely.
You have a safe day.
Maybe he's really focused.
Hey, Michael. Michael. Maybe he likes spinning the wheels.
Maybe he just loves trucks.
Maybe he's just being a boy.
Preoccupation with objects is one early sign of autism. Learn the others today. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better.